We are on a collision course with destiny today. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon trading card game history video. I'm super excited for this one because Fates Collide is one hell of a good set, and it has some really fun cards for me to play around with. So yeah, looking forward to discussing this one. There's a good reason we played Generations as a separate set, despite it being a bit of a weird release cycle and whatnot. It's because this set has got like 3 different archetypes that I immediately want to play, and it's not even just those 3 which are decent in here too. There's at least 3 other ones which are also very viable in here. So tons of stuff to do, and that really makes it one of those sets where we could probably spend a couple of weeks in here if we wanted to. We probably won't, because we'll probably end up doing that for Steam Siege instead, because that'll just be the Worlds format. There'll be a lot more stuff to do at that stage. But man, it'd be tempting, because this set is super good. Before we get into the set itself though, promos do have to be talked about, and once again, there just doesn't seem to be that many. I've been really consistently surprised here. Like, okay, a few of the generations, like, mythical Pokemon, I guess, would have been released as well, but I already went over those last time round. They're not exactly anything special, and yeah, we don't really care too much about that. What we could care about from here though, and I actually forgot this came out during this set's release, the Shaman over here is actually the Elite Trainer Box thing. That came out in July, which is in between this and Steam Siege, so it was legal for Worlds. That was something, I suppose, but then again, the next set is also legal for Worlds, so there is that. Yeah, this Shaman, 110 HP, again, still very frail. This one's got a 2 retreat, so it's a little bit bigger. I suppose there's 2 Shaman on the thing, so, you know, it is a lot cuter than the other Shaman, I'll give it that. But it doesn't really do too much for most decks. You might see this as a one-off with Seismitoad, Rough Sea sorts of decks there, because Aroma of Gratitude does let you heal 20 from each of your bench basics. So if you can get the Seismitoad to the bench via mana fee, you can end up healing like 50 damage every turn off the Toad. That's fine. That sort of deck is a bit of an attrition-based war anyway, so it's not the worst thing to have, but then that's another liability on the bench, right? That's 110 HP, bit difficult to justify. The other stuff that we have here is mostly from the Break Evolution box and the Mawile, which funnily enough released basically on the day that Fates Collide released. I'm afraid, as much as Azure would want me to play it, it's not very good, and we went over this before. We knew it wasn't very good at the time as well, but Mawile is his favourite Pokemon, and Mega Mawile especially. We did try, well, favourite Pokemon of the blog, I suppose. We did try and make it work, it just doesn't. Mawile EX is super frail with only 150 HP, its attacks all take like pure fairy, so you can't even double colors for this stuff. Realistically, if this was double colors, it probably still wouldn't be very good, so that should say, you know, how bad it is to have a triple fairy cost here. Mega Mawile is the frailest Mega, I think, in the entire game. It's only 190 HP. I cannot think of another Mega that's below 210, actually. So it's ridiculously frail. And Twin Grapple isn't even that amazing either. 3 fairy energy for 130 damage, and for each coin out of 2 heads you get, you discard an energy. 2-hit KO with Disruption, I guess, but, like, really? That's, for 3 fairy energy, that's what you're expecting? Yeah, promos aren't generally very good, but this is taking it to another level. Unlike most Mega promos, though, it does have a Spirit Link, so that's, like, the one reason we even considered it in the first place, but good lord is it bad. The other break box that we have here for Pokemon, like, Break Evolution stuff, introduces Ho-Oh and Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet is strictly to evolve from the Wob that we already have, and it's fine. It gives it 140 HP, it makes it an evolution so you could get around Jolteon, and right back at you is the Kirby reference, right? Right back at you for sure. It's not a great attack, but it is pretty funny. For a Psychic Colorless, or Psychic Under Dimension Valley, you discard all the energy on Wobbuffet, and then during the next turn, if the opponent damages Wobbuffet, then it puts damage counters on the attacker equal to the amount of damage that you took. So it's like Mirror Move, preemptive, which is not the greatest, especially for discarding the energy as well. However, it is a very good deterrent, because Wobbuffet's main attack does damage for every damage counter the opponent has on them. So it's, again, fine, right? You're not normally going to use it under most situations, but there are times where it's okay, and giving Wobbuffet plus 30 HP isn't necessarily the worst when it also gets around Jolteon. The other one we have here is Ho-Oh. This is the only Ho-Oh that's legal in format right now. The other one is an EX, and it's terrible. It's the same attack basically as what the Charizard EX had that we said was absolutely awful, and this one, it only gets 2 energy as well, which is actually relevant because Ho-Oh Break does require the 5 energy in order to attack. 3 of them need to be fire as well. It doesn't even have the decency to be triple colorless on this thing. 150 HP is nice on a basic break Pokemon, break evolution, so that's cool, but we're going to see a much better one in the set that does that. And Shining Flame, 160 is quite a lot. If you Muscle Band that, at least it hits 180, so it can get EXs without Fury Belts. But, And you can't use the attack in consecutive turns, which means you'll have to use Fire Wing that only does 100. Yeah, this one you can Blacksmith DCE, that's fine, but really? You're not even KOing Shaman with your basic attack? Just no, for 4 energy, that's absolutely awful. So, on to the set proper, and I think I want to talk about the trainer stuff first here, because there's quite a bit of goodness to look at here. The Spirit Links this time for our Megas, we have Alakazam making its debut again since Generation 4 was the last time we saw it. So yeah, getting Mega Alakazam. One of the ways that they got around not being able to print Kadabra, right, was just giving Alakazam the chase treatment here, because EXs are always basic, so they didn't have to print, you know, the lower stage. So that's neat. We have Altaria and we have Ordino. Ordino technically won Worlds, because it was specifically good into Night March. We'll talk about it later on though, because it's not very good otherwise, I don't think. Bent Spoon is the first of our items here. This tool card prevents the opponent's effects of attack except damage done to the Pokemon it's attached to. So that's neat. It means that you don't get energy discarded, it means you don't get the retreat lock of something like Rumble or Sand Tune, that type of thing. It's fine. There's not a ton of effects immediately that this works on. It doesn't work on Quaking Punch, for example, because that's on the player, but there's a few things it's pretty good for. Chaos Tower is the last of these special stadiums that are different for both players' sides. It's very bad, to be honest. One side protects you from sleep and paralysis, the other side protects you from poison and confusion. Yeah, pretty annoying that it doesn't really do anything. Like, sleep protection is fine if you use this with Hypno, for example. That means you don't go to sleep, but the opponent does, and I guess that's kind of cute. You could use it with Ariados in a non-grass type deck to protect yourself from being poisoned, and that's fine, but why would you be playing Ariados in a non-grass deck that isn't Raticate? And Raticate is already immune because of its ability, so yeah, pretty bad. Devolution Spray makes a comeback in here as well, which is really good. This helps a little bit for Fortress, although with Forest of Giant Plants you still cannot evolve the Pineco immediately, because this says you cannot evolve that turn, overrides the Forest, so that's a bit of an annoyance, but it's fine. Like, there's things in this set actually that Devo Spray is pretty good for, and it's sometimes better than Super Scoop Up because it's on a coin flip, and that sucks. So yeah, I like Devo Spray, good card. We have the Gen 1 fossils here as well. They've still got the restored mechanic because it's still Gen 6, which unfortunately makes them really bad, but at least they tried with a support card here. Fossil Excavation Kit, if you flip any head, you have to flip anything really. Just, you're flipping for the, effectively flipping for the restored part, but yeah, put 2 in any combination of the fossil item cards back into your hand. So you play a couple of these, you whiff or you get them, whatever happens, you then play the Fossil Excavation Kit and get them back into the hand to try again. Fair enough. technically a +1 on an item. That's pretty reasonable, so yeah. Energy Pouch is a very interesting item card to have around. This tool card only works if the Pokemon it's attached to gets KO'd by damage from an opponent's attack, but it lets you put all the basic energy from that Pokemon back into the hand. There is a good situation with Magnezone that you might want to use something like this. You could use it on the Kingdra in this set that we'll talk about later on. That's effectively something like Magnezone. If you put 4 or 5 energy back into the hand, flood them all back onto the field next turn wherever you want. Jobs are good and pretty good. Energy Reset is intriguing as well. This was actually used in Expanded when the win condition unknowns came out, because it was a way of managing to self-damage yourself enough to get the instant win by putting 66 damage counters down on your own board. Yes, that is as stupid as it sounds. Put as many energy from your Pokemon to your hand as you like. Once again, it can be pretty reasonable for something like Magnezone if you do a bunch of hits and do a bunch of energy attaches, and then you take a hit but you don't die. You can energy reset next turn, so you could play something like Max Potion. I think it's a little bit too greedy trying to build that into a Magnezone deck, but you know, it's the principle of it. At least there are ways of using it. It also lets you put any energy, not just basics, so it could be something that you could play into like accelerating from the discard with, say, Carbink, that's in this set, or Garchomp from before, where you can accelerate special energy, but then you could put them back into the hand to put them where you actually want later on. DCE can get placed that way too, so it's like you can preemptively place a DCE down and say Night March, and then if it turns out you don't need it on, like, I don't know, the Shaman that it was on, you can just put it back into the hand, so that's pretty cool. Fairy Drop is a unique tool for the fairy decks. This is one of the reasons we didn't try Sylveon in the previous set, because this lets you heal 50 from a Pokemon that has a fairy energy on it. Sylveon also heals a little bit as well with what it does, so the idea with this is that you'd be able to basically heal 100 every turn from a 210 HP Pokemon. It's kind of decent, but most of the fairy decks are maybe a bit too low impact for this, and I don't know, I'd probably rather just play Max Potion. That's just me. Aromatisse is kind of important for that though, so maybe this is still fine. Speaking on fairies, Fairy Garden gets reprinted, which is pretty useful here, so we'll have that around as well. Next up is Last is Special, which is not very special, unfortunately. The last design in Gen 6 was actually extremely good though. There are very few generations that do the last design better, in my opinion. Draw a card for each of your opponent's benched basic Pokemon. If it didn't say basic, this card would have been great. It would have been like Steven's Advice, but better, right? But the problem is, most decks do have evolution stuff, and even those that don't are mostly not going to have more than 3 Pokemon down that you're going to get. Once they see this anyway, if you don't draw more than 3 cards, this is just worse than the basic, you know, draw 3 support. I think it's Tierno in this generation. Honestly, they're so bad that I just forget them. I'm pretty sure it's Tierno in this generation. If you don't draw 4 cards at the very least, it's just worse than that, and you never play that, so why would you play this? Mega Catcher is something I actually really like the idea of. It's an item that just gusts up one of the opponent's Mega Evolutions. I really like this because I like having restricted gust in the format, right? Like Lysander I think is a reasonable enough card because the restriction is it is your supporter for turn, and you do have to kind of play around that, but I didn't like Pokemon Catcher before the flip. I don't like it with the flip either, but you know, I didn't like it in Gen 5 because the gust was too free. This one is free gust, but it's only on very select targets, and not every deck is even playing Megas. Quite a lot of them aren't, so it's not the sort of card you're just going to jam 4 of into the deck and expect it to work flawlessly. So I like it. It's really good. I have a history with the N here. I really didn't like that this came back at the time. I will actually be playing this artwork this time, by the way, because it's just really cool, right? But this one's excellent too, actually. This artwork is amazing. I didn't like it coming back, and the reason I didn't like it coming back is because it felt cheap. that it was just reprinting the same card again. My logic for this is more that we have just left a format that was nothing but N and Juniper / Sycamore, and we are now still in a format that now it is just gonna be N and Sycamore again as the only like draw stuff. And it felt lazy at the time, I think. A lot of people really loved that this came back. I just didn't want it. But in retrospect now, the fact if I've had to play like triple Shauna in the decks that we played last round, I think I will appreciate this a fair bit more this time. VS Seeker really is a very unique card to have with N, because it means you don't necessarily have to play 4 of it like you would have before. You still can, and in decks that don't have an inherent draw engine you probably will, but I think there is actually still merit to playing something like Shauna as a one-of alongside. By the way, yeah, these are from a future set thing for the alternate arts, and they are rather pretty. But yeah, it's like, I think there's merit to it, I just don't like it, you know? But then again, now I think with hindsight it's probably for the best that it comes back. Fan Club gets a reprint here. Zygarde gets a specific tool, just like Genesect DX did. It's very similar, it just doesn't have the added effects, and it does discard 1 more energy, but it doesn't have the added effects of what G-Booster did of being unaffected by effects on the opponent, so it doesn't get through Safeguard and stuff. But it is a tool you can play 4 copies of if you really wanted to. So you can play more than one of this, and you don't have to try and recover it with Shadow Triad or something dumb like that. Random Receiver gets a reprint as well. This is probably not amazing right now, and is unlikely to be amazing in most decks because VS Seeker is just around. But when Battle Compressor rotates, I could maybe see it. I'd have to test it again. The card is still fine, I just don't think it's necessary right now. But I mean, between this and Trainer's Mail, yeah, there's logic for it. The problem is this is a generation where tech supporters are like at an all-time high, so you'd have to really streamline the supporter count in the deck, and I don't know if that's the correct way to go about things. Scorched Earth also gets a reprint, not Fighting Stadium. This is a bit of a fighting-centric deck set, but we don't get Fighting Stadium back, so that's 1 damage mod we're losing. That's fine, we'll make up for it. Team Rocket's Handiwork is a very flippy mill card. I guess Houndoom could probably use this. Flip 2 coins for each heads, discard the top 2 cards of the opponent's deck. There's actually a Weezing in this set that does the exact same thing for DCE, which is very silly, but yeah. And then finally, Ultra Ball gets the reprint, so we do keep it for quite a while. DCE gets a very pink reprint in this one, so yeah, it was printed in Generations though, so whatever. And Strong Energy gets reprinted in here, so huzzah, I suppose, for those who enjoy that. On to the actual set proper for the Pokemon here. We are going to skip the first grass stuff here. The Morphin is, I guess, kind of cute, being able to shift damage away from Wormadam, but Wormadams are only like 110, 120 HP anyway, so who cares? Superior is something I actually saw just a little bit of play. This card's interesting because of Forest Giant Plants and the fact that it's a 1 energy attacker. It's a 140 HP guy with 2 attacks. One colorless does 40, and during your next turn, any attack you do with Superior does 60 more damage to your opponent's active. Before applying weakness and resistance, sometimes that can matter, because it means Seismitoad would get killed in one go. And Slashing Strike is just 1 grass to 80, but you can't Slashing Strike in consecutive turns. So you want to coil for as long as possible, and then Slashing Strike for the 140 finish, or 160 with Muscle Band, sorry. Yeah, you want a 160 where you eventually, when you need to finish something off. The reason this is considerable, because it is a bit slow, right, and very vulnerable to gusting, the reason this is considerable is because of Servine. When you evolve into Servine from your hand, you may flip a coin, and if heads, it leaves your opponent paralyzed. It's the Game Boy Articuno's, the legendary Articuno's power, as a thing you can just do. And this is really neat, because this lets you potentially disrupt the opponent for like a couple of turns as you coil and just like do enough damage to get through, right? Coil is doing 60 with a Muscle Band and 120 on the following turns, so that's just about enough, right? And if you can stick a couple of things with Paralysis, you're kind of okay. because Superior is a little bit frail to just getting KO'd as well. The next Superior doesn't do more damage, it's only the previous one, so yeah, a little bit awkward. But it's a 1 energy thing, you can use like Super Scoop Up and stuff like that in here as well. It's fine, like, it's a pretty solid deck. Grass is a good type right now, it's got a lot of support. It's funny because grass is usually not considered very good, but yeah, right now it's a pretty solid weakness to hit, so yeah, good stuff. We'll move on to, I guess technically this is the better Fennekin out of the ones we've got, and it's cute because the Chikorita Fennekin thing was something that was in previous artworks, and they found each other now in the Parallel City. It's great. This one's got Tail Whip for a DCE, which might actually matter. Preventing the opponent from attacking 50% of the time is Disruption, so if you're desperate you might need that. The Brazen in here is actually the best one as well, I think, because it's got Crushing Hammer on the coin flip, right? If you flip heads, 20 damage plus discard an energy for 1 fire, that's pretty good. And then the Delphox, both of them actually, are what we really want to talk about here. This is a deck I'm probably going to bring from this round because it's one of the 3 major ones. Superior being the 3rd one, but this is the 2nd main one I want to look at. 140 HP, no abilities on this one, but do keep in mind we have the XY base set one, which is draw until you have 6 in hand once per turn. So we have a really good draw engine built in too, and Delphox itself has been able to be used as, like, say, Delphox Magnezone when that was available, or Delphox Emboar. That sort of deck has been playable in the past, so supporting with that Delphox definitely something worth doing. For 1 fire energy, this 140 HP Delphox puts your opponent to sleep and does 40 damage. That's fine. Like, again, if you absolutely need to, this is an early Red Candy thing, for example. You could just go Red Candy on turn 1, do this, and do some fun. Now, not turn 1, but like if you've gone first, your 2nd turn of attacking. Yeah, you could do that, and it's fine. But the real meat of this is Psystorm. For 3 colorless energy, this will bring back not Mega, but Gardevoir EX from Sandstorm. Bring back that sort of thing here. 20 damage for every energy attached to all Pokemon in play. Not energy cards, energy period. So, obviously, bare minimum it's doing 60, which is not impressive, but you have Blacksmith, you have the Delphox over here as well, actually, the Flare Witch, that once per turn, this Break evolution of Delphox lets you accelerate a fire from your deck, so cool. You can accelerate with that. It's got 180 HP as well, by the way, when it Break evolves, so it's even bigger than Greninja was, and it's very easy for this to do like 200, 220 damage, because it counts the opponent's energy too. So if the opponent even has like 3 energy in play, which is what a lot of attackers need as their attack, then that's another 60 damage that you do. Combine that again with all the Blacksmith stuff you've got with the double colorless energy, because it is compatible with that too, and it's very easy for there to be over 9 energy in play. Think about how straightforward it was for the Darkrai deck to use its sort of effect as well and get like 120 minimum, but usually 160 plus damage on board. This is the same sort of way, and whilst it isn't as disruptive as Greninja and it doesn't have water duplicates, unfortunately, this feels very similar to Gren in like the inevitability factor. And it's not even that slow, because again, you have the other Delphox that draws until you've got 6 in hand. So you can very easily play like a lot down. The tricky bit is, unlike Greninja, you need to get multiple Fennekin down on turn 1, which means you are probably needing to play something like Bridget down here as well. Tricky deck, but exceptionally powerful when it gets going. Super fun to do. There's an Omastar in here as well that works with the fossil stuff. Once during your turn before you attack me, search your deck for a restored Pokemon, put it onto the bench. This would probably just be searching for Aerodactyl, because that is the best one. But yeah, realistically, this just ain't happening. There is a break evolution for this if you are feeling absolutely ridiculous and feel like Archie needs some work. This ability on this thing, it's only 140 HP too, by the way, not even that much of an upgrade. This ability lets you, once during your turn before you attack, switch one of the opponent's benched EXs with that active. So a little bit better than the Mega Catcher, it lets you bring up Shaman as well. And I think that's really what you're looking for here. The idea with this deck would be like Omastar Aerodactyl, And Omastar with Archie, you get Aerodactyl into play. Aerodactyl's actually strong enough to KO Shaman, but it's also pretty reasonable in its own right as a general like attack disrupt thing. And then you get the Break evolution out next turn, which I don't know how you're doing that considering you can't get the break, you know, it's very clunky with Archie, but I'm sure there's a way you could manage it. Get the Break evolution out and then just gust the opponent's EX Shaman on the bench and target whistle it every time as well, probably. Very, very clunky, very slow, but I think that's about your best bet. Maybe it's something that could work, but man, that is going to be difficult to do. Glaceon EX is the counterpart to Jolteon from the previous set. 170 HP to retreat this time because Glaceon is a very slow Pokemon in comparison, but its attacks are pretty good. Second Bite for a Water and Colorless does 20 plus 10 for each damage counter on the opponent's active, so if you've been doing a decent amount of spreading, that's pretty solid. And Crystal Ray is the counterpart to Flash Ray. For one Water and a double Colorless, it does 70, and during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by Evolution Pokemon. So yeah, it lets you block out any evolving deck. Megas obviously count, breaks count. So yeah, you've got Jolteon that can block basics. This can block the evolutions. Now, it can be a little bit tricky to get enough energy on both of these separately, but there's a solution to that we'll get to later on in the set that lets you copy attacks. So yeah. I actually really like this White Kyurem. I don't think it's the strongest card out there, and it would be a bit specific maybe to build a deck on, but 130 HP, Blizzard Burn is basically the same as what Plasma Kyurem was, but it does 10 more base damage, so 130 for double Water and a Colorless. That's pretty good. It's Heavy Ball searchable, just like the old Kyurem was as well, and Burning Icicles is a pretty solid first attack. For Water Colorless, technically Water Fire is what you want on this thing though, but for Water Colorless it does 40, but if you have any fire energy attached, it does 20 to 2 of the opponent's bench as well. This can be paid by Rainbow Energy if you really wanted to, but it's also not too difficult to use like Max Elixir and this sort of thing. And Professor's Letter is a card that exists as well, so it's plenty easy to get a fire energy down on this thing. Maybe Max Elixir is a little bit convoluted in terms of how many fires and stuff you play, but that is a very good amount of damage to do for 2 energy on the one Visor. I really like this guy. I just don't know if it's something I could build a deck on, but if I have the time, I might try. It's pretty good. Barbaracle is almost playable. There is some stuff you can do with the Ninetales that came out before that block stadiums from being played, because specifically if you have a stadium card in play, the opponent can't attach any special energy from their hand to their Pokemon. That's devastating against a lot of decks. That's an auto win against Night March and Vespiquen, for example. But the problem is if they bounce your stadium, then you just don't get this effect, which is terrible. But yeah, if you play this with Ninetales, Sai did show me a pretty heinous looking deck that played one of this and one of the Ninetales that stops you from bouncing the stadium, basically. So you lock your own stadium into play, and then the opponent never gets to attach special energy from the hand. So yeah, some decks will just lose to that. Here is the number one thing I am most excited to try from this set. Alakazam EX is really fun. Is it the best deck out there? No, it's a bit complicated sometimes to get the setup for, but you know me from the Crobat stuff, you know I love placing damage counters down with abilities and whatnot, and this just does that. It's a frail 160 HP EX, it's the same as Jolteon that way, it's on the low end. This one's got a 2 energy retreat cost, but we do still have mystery energy, so that's pretty good. And its attack basically never comes up, but you might see it with Dimension Valley. One Psychic and a Colorless to do 3 damage counters on each of the opponent's Pokemon that have energy attached. Very rarely that might come up, but realistically this is the stepping stone for the Mega, and Kinesis is the perfect ability to work with that. Whenever you Mega Evolve the Alakazam over here from your hand, before it evolves, you may put 2 damage counters on the opponent's active and 3 damage counters on one of the opponent's bench. It is Golbat plus Crobat, although a little bit more restrictive, but it's Golbat plus Crobat, which works with Mega Alakazam Zen Force. 210 HP, only 1 retreat now, so it does actually get a little bit faster as it evolves, as it actually does in the game too. That's pretty fitting. And yeah, Zen Force for a Psychic Colorless does only 10, but 30 more damage for each damage counter specifically, on the opponent's active. So all of the damage counter placing you can do, there's a bunch of different cards you can use for, obviously. Crobat is one obvious thing. The Zam itself is often enough if you play like Devo sprays and stuff like that, so that's pretty good. And I guess Fortress is also something you could consider, because it does spread damage to all of the opponent's Pokemon, so that's pretty good. Or you could do some prior setup with something like Gourgeist as well, that might actually work too. Zen Force is a pretty fun attack, and yeah, you get 5 damage counters on the opponent, and then you're essentially hitting 210. 6 is the most you would normally need, because 240 KOs basically everything in the game, so that's roughly where you want to hit. But it's also just incredibly efficient too. It's a 2-hit KO machine, and that is super good. So yeah, fun deck to play. There's going to be a few different ways of doing it. We'll see if it can come up with something good. Mew is mostly a Night March card, to be honest, because it basically fulfills the same role as Mew EX used to do. 50 HP, 0 retreat, so very frail, but the 0 retreat is really good. And its ability lets you ignore nothing. It lets you use the attacks of your basic Pokemon in play. So you do need the energy, so it doesn't ignore that. But this is the way that you could play Jolteon and Glaceon, because if you put like Water, Lightning, whatever on this Pokemon, you can use either attack depending on what the opponent actually has in play at the time. Its own attack for 1 colorless energy lets you search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into the hand. It is obviously Psychic, so it works with Dimension Valley, so that colorless cost can be reduced to 0. And yeah, the fact of it's got 0 retreat too. This guy is really, really good. Just exceptionally frail, so keep that in mind. There's a very funny Grumpig over here, apart from just the artwork is amazing. And look at all the spoons! It's getting set up with the bent spoon stuff. It's going to bend them for the trainer card. Its head walking attack lets you put a basic from the opponent's discard onto their bench and then put 3 damage counters on that Pokemon. It is hilarious versus Night March, because you just put the Joltit back on the bench and then kill it, and that's it. It's very silly. Not very good otherwise, and probably not very good against Night March either, because you've just got to set a stage 1 up every single turn, which is not great, but it's funny, so there you go. Speaking on funny, but very much not good, the whole Reuniclus line here does bonus damage if you have other copies of the Reuniclus line in play. So like Solosis will get more damage from Solosis in play. Duosin also does, but it gets more damage if there's a Duosin in play as well. And Reuniclus gets all of them. 10 plus 30 for the Solosis, 10 plus 60 for the Duosin, 10 plus 90 for the Reuniclus. You obviously need to have the most specific setup in the world to do this, but 2 Reuniclus, a Duosin, and a Solosis in play adds up to 190 damage for 1 energy under Dimension Valley. But good freaking luck, it's a stage 2 of 90 HP. Why? On to the fighting types, and yeah, this is a fighting base set, there's a lot of good ones in here. Marowak lets you prevent all effects of attacks done to you or your hand by the opponent's Pokemon. Remove any existing effects when it comes into play. This is then out to Seismitoad, and is a potential card to play in an Archie-based deck alongside the Gallade. So I've seen Night March play 1 copy of this, 1 copy of Gallade in an Archie-focused build, like Raw Night March, not the Vespiquen thing, and yeah, it works. It's pretty good. Boomerang, not so good, but it's like Seismitoad's one of the bigger issues for Night March, just item lock in general. So yeah, strong card. Kabutops just has absolutely nothing going for it. It'd be bad even if it wasn't a restored Pokemon, so whatever. Regirock is pretty great. It's pretty great, yeah. 180 HP, 3 energy retreat, so it is heavy ball searchable. That actually matters because the Zygarde is also heavy ball searchable. It's a bench sitter though, because that Bedrock Press attack is really bad. But your fighting Pokemon that aren't Regirock EX do 10 more damage per Regirock you have in play. This does stack, so you've got another damage mod if you want to play it. Very silly card. Also got an alter art much later on that we just didn't have a full art for this for forever, so we never got to play it with this one. I'm torn on it. I think it's fine, but the yellow really doesn't work for me. I guess its eyes are normally yellow anyway, so maybe it works a little bit better, and the background is kind of yellow, so I suppose it's cool, but it's not the best I've seen. On to the other fighting stuff, we have Carbinks. all three of them. Card surprisingly very good here, unlike the video game. The first one is respectable because sometimes crushing hammers and stuff do come into the format, especially in Seismitoad decks and whatnot. Energy Keeper prevents basic energy from your basic Pokemon from being, basically it protects them from being discarded by attacks, abilities, or trainers. So it's the full gamut, pretty good stuff there. Its attack is actually also potentially good because Stone Edge, it's the most damage a Carbink is going to do here. Yeah, it's on a coin flip, but strong energy, blah 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 blah. There's a lot of damage mods you can do with it, so that's pretty good. The other Carbink is the return of Safeguard, though. 90 HP, both of them are 1 retreat too, very nimble that way. But 90 HP is slightly bigger, and it protects you from all effects of attacks, including damage done by EXs. So yeah, it is on a basic, so if you don't break evolve it, Silent Lab is going to be kind of annoying, but you're going to break evolve it, so it's fine. Its attack is nothing too special, but again, it's fighting, so strong energy, etc. You can get this to hit 100, and it's not actually that ridiculous to do, because Carbink Break lets you accelerate energy. Goes up to 110 HP, becomes a break evolution, so you can't Fury Belt it, but you can not, protect it from Silent Lab, basically. It keeps the Safeguard of the previous form, and for 1 fighting energy, you do 20 damage, and attach 2 energy cards from your discard pile to one of your fighting Pokemon. Energy cards, so it means you can do strong energy out of the discard as well. This is like Turbo Garchomp in that sense. It does a lot less damage, but it accelerates 2 energy, and also has Safeguard, which Garchomp does not. Can actually work with Garchomp too if you can find the deck space for it. It's pretty good in that aspect as well, just to give them another... I mean, they don't need the anti-EX, it's more for the acceleration side of things, because Garchomp only needs 2 energy to attack, so getting it set up in 1 turn, pretty solid. Yeah, it's got every advantage it could want right now. It is a really, really good card, and that's just something to keep in mind, because Zygarde is also pretty good in this set. I don't really like the, what is this, a 10% form? Don't really like this one. Aura Break, I guess, is kind of cute if you're specifically going against, like, Yveltal. You could probably make them very annoyed, but not, like, super strong, to be honest. But this Zygarde is actually playable. 120 HP, so relatively big, especially because Fury Bout gets played a lot here. And both of its attacks are fine. Rumble for a Fighting Colorless does 30 and prevents retreat next turn. Kind of good, not as good as the Stun Fist that we had before, but that was its stronger attack. This is a weaker one, so it makes sense. And Geostrike for 2 fighting and the colors does 120 damage on a 1 prize, a basic Pokemon. That's pretty good. Downside is that you do 10 to each of your own bench Pokemon, but realistically that's not that much of a downside. And it's got all the fighting type stuff, so yeah, very powerful effect there as well. The Zygarde EX, which we didn't get the full out of until much later on, but this guy is pretty neat. 190 HP. This one's 10 above all the other EXs that we've had before now. Just like Lucario, 3 attacks on this thing. It's a 3 energy retreat cost, so you could play Heavy Ball with this as well, if you really want to. But yeah, progressively more damage on the attacks as you would expect. Lance Pulse for 1 fighting energy does 20. If there is any stadium in play, it does 20 more. So this is 10 more than what Lucario's base damage was there. So this one you can also very easily hit 90 damage on without too many problems, so that's pretty good. Cellstorm is not quite as good as Corkscrew Punch, I don't think, but it allows for a different playstyle. For a fighting and a colorless, this does 60 and you heal 30 from this Pokemon, so this lets you play stuff like Pokemon Center Lady and heal tank quite a bit, which is good. And then Lansrath, just like the, I don't remember what the attack is even called, like Somersault Kick or something, on the Lucario, 2 fighting and a colorless to do 100. You can get it up to numbers that you want as well. But this also has access to that Cellstorm attack, not Cellstorm, the All Cells Burn attack as well from the tool, so you do have a 200 damage option if you want, which can be buffed to get to 240 etc. against all the Megas, so you can KO whatever you need to do. It's pretty good. You've got acceleration with the Carbink, you've got just good early pressure in general, and fighting.deck is still strong even to this day. It's weak to grass instead of psychic, so that gives you a different weakness to play alongside the Lucario. I like it, it's good. On to the dark types, and Umbreon is interesting. It's 170 HP, 1 retreat. Umbreon is pretty slow as a Pokemon, so it's nice to see it have one retreat here. Veil of Darkness for one colorless does only 20, but you get to discard as many cards out of hand as you want and redraw them, so you can use this in trainer lock matchup or item lock matchups to bin all of your items and draw a bunch of new cards. That's kind of good. And its main thing, at least what we think is its main thing, is endgame. For one dark and two colorless, it only does 70. Most evolutions seem to just not do very much damage on their free energy stuff, but whatever. 70 damage, and if the opponent's Mega is KO'd by this, take 2 more prize cards. Okay, so we just take 4 prize cards for KOing a Mega off of this, huh? That is really powerful if you get it set up. Max Elixir plus DC, potentially. You could Y-Cyclone with Yveltal to this thing, and just get it set up for future hits. It's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Tyranitar's funny but not very good, not really going to spend too much time on this, but when you evolve into Tyranitar, for every prize the opponent's taken, you get to attach a Darkness Energy from your discard to it, but it takes 5 Darkness Energy to do its thing. Like, come on, it's never going to work, right? It even has to discard cards from your own deck too, like, really? Just no. Mandibuzz is kind of neat. For one colorless energy, this 110 HP stage 1 does 60 to one of the opponent's Pokemon that has an ability. Doesn't apply weakness and resistance for the bench, but that's fine. It's like 2-shot in Shaman, maybe that's not good enough to be honest, but there are a few Pokemon you could get some pretty decent hits on with this, and yeah, it's alright. Like, maybe it works against, if you're weak to something like the Carbink or whatever, you could maybe do some good work against that. It's fun, but yeah, whatever. Bronzor is the best Bronzor we have here. It has Iron Defense, and that's the most relevant attack, right? 60 HP 2 retreat instead of the 50 HP 1 retreat one that we would have liked to play before. And Payback is not as good an attack as Iron Defense because you might just stall a turn with this, so there we go. Bronzong itself is pretty solid. Heavy Ball Searchable still. This one's got 100 HP though, so not Level Ball Searchable like the old one. But it has a stronger bench barrier. Prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to your bench Pokemon. This basically turns Trevenant into a non-issue, because it means that Silent Fear doesn't do anything, and you resist Psychic with Metal Decks, so Tree Slam doesn't either. Guard Press, not a super good attack, but we don't really use it for the attack. Bronzong Break, on the other hand, is pretty solid with the other Bronzong too. Metal Rain, it goes up to 130 HP, so that's actually really good for the old Bronzong, plus 40 on that thing. And Metal Rain, I really wanted to call it Make It Rain, because look at it, it's a gold Bronzong, of course it's going to make it rain. But this is like 3 generations too early. 1 Metal on the colorless, discard as many Metal Energy attached to this Pokemon as you like, and then for each one, choose one of the opponent's Pokemon, do 30 damage to it. You don't apply weakness and resistance ever, so it can KO a Joltik in the active as well. And the key thing is you get to choose the same Pokemon multiple times. So it could just be you've stockpiled a bunch of Metal Energy on the Bronzong so you can discard, say, 4 of them, KO a Shaman. But this is pretty solid into Night March, which is one of the things that Bronzong can have some issues with as a deck, because it's just not as fast as them. Being able to discard 3 energy and KO both a Joltik and a Pumpkaboo, that's pretty good into that deck. So there's plenty of good situations for this to come up. It's never more than a one of, but that one can win the game, so keep it in mind. Lucario is at least interesting because we have Target Whistle around. If you've got fewer Pokemon on your bench than your opponent for a Metal and Colorless, this does 30 plus 60 times the difference. So with 3 Pokemon difference, you're going to do 210. That's really strong, but I don't know how you're getting 2 energy on this thing consistently. I don't know how you're making sure that it isn't going to be your only Pokemon. And therefore, you know, like how basically it's just too clunky. And the opponent's not going to play into it, so you're going to have to play like a lot of Target Whistles and stuff to make it even work. Just a bit too clunky. Genesect is another good thing for Metal decks. It's not efficient, but it does a couple of good things for the archetype that make it work. 180 HP, so a bit bulkier than last time, and its Drive Change is what makes it pretty solid for the deck, because you are going to play Floatstone in a Bronzong deck anyway, so you might as well play something that lets you recycle that tool. Once during your turn before you attack, you may put a Pokemon tool attached to this Pokemon into your hand. So early game, Floatstone on this thing so you can get it to the bench pretty easy. Late game, or like after you've done that, Put the Floatstone back into the hand so you can stick it on the Bronzong, and put a Fury Belt on this guy so it has more HP and does a little bit more damage. Rapid Blaster for triple metal discards as many energy, metal energy specifically, as you like from this Pokemon, and you do 100 plus 20 for each energy discarded this way. So it is metal only, and Bronzong decks do quite like to play double colorless a lot of the time, so that's a bit awkward. But yeah, metal energy only, but it does let you do modular damage. You can hit up to like 180 plus with this thing if you want to. That can be pretty useful. It is a little bit awkward though because it's not an efficient attack whatsoever. Yeah, you generally don't mind that much, but this implies that you already have 2 or 3 Bronzong set up, which is not an easy feat to achieve most of the time. So it's a bit awkward, but it does the job, and that's all we can really ask for it right now. Fairy types, and I think we have to talk about the Altarias as a pair here obviously. Regular Altaria is not part fairy, so it is colorless type in this case, and its attacks are nothing special. For a DCE, 30 plus 60 if you healed it this turn, and heal another 30 from it. That's, I guess, kind of neat. Means that Fairy Drop works with it, I think that's what the synergy is supposed to be here. But it's on DCE, not, like, Fairy, right? So you've got to have a separate Fairy energy to do the Fairy Drop thing. Kind of annoying. But still, not the worst attack ever. Mega Altaria keeps up the healing thing. 220 HP, passable enough I suppose, and for a Fairy Double Colorless it does 100, and if you have any special energy attached, so you really are incentivized to play DCE here, do 30 more damage and heal 30 from each of your Pokemon. Very good into spread. Problem is there's not a lot of spread in the format, and I don't know how you're getting this out against Trevenant to make it work, but I guess you just win the Trevenant matchup if it gets into play, so that's cool, but good luck getting it with free energy as well. I don't know. Diane CEX is the other fun one here. 150 HP is very frail, but Sparkle Veil makes up for it. As long as this is your active, any damage done to your Pokemon in total by an opponent's attack is reduced by 30. So it includes itself, and that effectively puts it at 180 HP. Realistically 210, because unless you one-shot it, you do have to hit it twice, which is good for it. And it also protects your bench from spread damage as well, so that's good. Doesn't protect damage counters, so no Silent Fear protection, but you take what you can get, right? Wonder Stage is the attack, and this is where it slightly falls apart a little bit. For a Fairy and a Double Colorless it does 60, but if there is any Stadium in play, this does 50 more. 110 is just barely enough to kill the Shaman, that's like your bare minimum sort of thing. It's fine, free energy is a bit expensive for that though, so not the greatest, but it's passable enough. Solitary Dragon! There is only one dragon in this entire set, and it is Kingdra, but it's a pretty good one. 170 HP, just a 1 retreat on this thing, which is really good for the Magnezone deck you would be basically forced to play it in. For 1 colorless energy, Big Storm does 20, discard Stadium in play. That actually matters quite a bit, there's a lot of decks that really want the Stadium in play, so pretty good first attack. And then Dragon Trail, not Tail, for 1 water and triple colorless, does 60, but it does 30 more for each basic lightning that's on this Pokemon. So clearly, this is a Magnezone deck. And it's pretty alright at that. At base value, without attaching more energy, it's doing 150, which is a good number, and if you upgrade it with more energy, you can get whatever one-shots you want. Magnezone is a deck that will play Fisherman and stuff like that anyway, so you can get a lot of energy back. It's not too difficult to put 4 or even 5 energy on this thing and do over 200 damage by that point. It's fine. It's a decent, fun deck to play. I've already played Magnezone myself, though, and Sai is looking at it, but he's looking at it with one of the colorless Pokemon we'll get to in a minute. First off the Aerodactyl though, because this is your Omastar build. Double colorless energy on a 120 HP restored Pokemon with 0 retreat, by the way. Double colorless energy nets you Jet Draft for 120 damage. Discard a special energy on the opponent's active. It almost makes you want to play it, right? This is probably the single strongest attack in the entire set when you look at it at face value. Because Double Colorless is a single energy attach, super easy to do. It can be played in any deck really, because colorless energy is everywhere. It's got no retreat, and it discards special energy, so it's a 2-shot with disruption on a 1-prizer. The problem is, it's a restored Pokemon, and that takes a lot of RNG to get it going. We don't have anything like Claydol or Uxie level X that puts stuff to the bottom of the deck, so I just don't see how you're getting this to pan out. It's a shame, because the card is really good, and it looks really cool too, but I just don't think it's there. Maybe if we had time and we could do like a funny meme deck sort of thing, this could work. I just don't think it's playable enough. The Snorlax here is very funny, at least, because the Hypno that was actually is also by the same artist too. It's our boy Kamir. It has a synergy for 140 HP, 3 colors energy to do 30 plus 90 if you are asleep. Because yes, this is an attack that you can use when you're asleep. There's a Hypno from that, literally terrifying artwork too, but the Hypno from, I think it was Breakpoint, had Goodnight Babies as its attack. I don't know what they were thinking with it, to be honest, on that sort of thing. It puts both actives to sleep, so the opponent goes to sleep as well, they might not wake up on stuff there. And 120 for free energy with potential disruption on a pretty bulky basic. Put a Fury Belt on this thing, it's 180 HP as a one prizer. Yikes. Its second attack is terrible, we don't care, but that's fine. And then we have Lugia. Lugia is what Sai is going to play with, or at least wants to test, with the Magnezone deck that I played before. It is effectively Bouffalont from, which one was it? Drag is Exalted, but with 20 extra HP and slightly different weakness resistant stuff. 120 HP, if it's your active Pokemon, any damage done to it by the opponent's active is reduced by 20. It is a little bit different, because I think Bouffalant's Spoofo worked even when it wasn't active, but yeah, very similar effect there. And Intensify and Burn, the same attack as what Goldbreaker was. Triple Colorless to do 60, plus 60 if the opponent's active is an EX. So that kills Shaman straight away as well, which gives you a decent out there as a thing. Also kills Manaphy though, which is something that not every Shaman killing card could say, so that's pretty good. It has a Break evolution that puts it up to 150 HP, keeping that pressure ability too, and Flash of Destruction, probably the best break attack that we've seen so far. 4 colorless energy for 150 damage, and you discard 2 energy on this Pokemon. Could just be the DCE if you're playing like Bronzong with this or something that you discard. But yeah, really strong attack that it doesn't have to use every single turn, because Intensify and Burn is still reasonable enough in its own right. This card is good. You just need a little bit of energy acceleration to work with it, but we have Magnezone and we have Bronzong. That's pretty much all you need, really. So yeah, strong card. And then lastly, we do need to talk about the thing that won Worlds this year. Shintaro Ito just made the perfect meta call, I think was the thing for it here. Because Ordino isn't very good, really. Nobody had this on their radar when it came out, and for good reason, because it's just unimpressive. It is Heavy Ball searchable on both sides, but I don't even think he played Heavy Ball. I don't have the deck list up at the moment because I just don't have, the internet's been a bit slow right now, so just not really space for that. But yeah, 180 HP, Drain Slap does 20 for a colorless and heal 20 from this Pokemon. Sai was mentioning if you Fury Belted it, you could do 30 and KO Joltix with that, which is funny, but then you can't Mega, so bleh. And then Do the Wave for free colorless does 60 plus 10 for each of the each of your bench Pokemon, sorry. So it caps out at 110. So again, Shaman killing numbers. That's exactly what Mega Ordino is here for as well. Goes up to 220 HP, so not even that bulky. You'd expect Ordino to have 230 for sure, but oh well. Magical Symphony for 3 colors energy does 110, exactly enough to KO the Shaman, and you'll want to Lysander those Shamans as much as possible, because that's exactly what this is good at. If you have played a supporter card from your hand during this turn, 50 damage to one of the opponent's bench as well. So specifically against Night March, gust up the Shaman, do 110, KO that, do 50 to the Joltik on the bench, or the Mew that's on the bench now, because that's 50 HP, KO that as well, take 3 prizes, and just do that twice and you win the game. That's the idea. It is specifically good there, and it might be somewhat passable against something like Trev, I don't really know, but it takes advantage of some of the low damage output decks that are here at the moment, because like Seismitoe is still very good and that only does 30 at a time, and you eventually just win out with how much damage you can I guess put out. I think there was a decent bit of healing in the deck as well, so it was able to deal with the lower HP stuff. I don't honestly remember, but this synergizes with stuff like Pokemon Center Lady and any other tech supporter quite well, so I'd have to take a look at the deck again, but honestly, I wouldn't recommend trying to play it. This was the biggest meta call of all time, and yeah, it's specifically decent enough at one thing, but even then it is not perfect, because it is 220 HP. Night March can hit that, and that makes it rather risky, we shall say, because Megas, even with colorless attack costs like this, they're still difficult to set up, so yeah, I wouldn't recommend trying to play it. But it is very funny that this one world's not the sort of Pokemon you would ever expect that to happen to. And that is the set. Yeah, there's an awful lot to go into on this one, and you can hopefully appreciate why I'm so excited to play this particular set. Tons of good stuff going on here. But that will do for now. Thank you very much for watching. We might be a little bit slow in terms of uploading the battle stuff in this one, because, I mean, this is being recorded quite early, but this is the week where Obsidian Flames comes out, so yeah, Pepper's going to be pretty busy. We might not get to this one for a little bit, but it's all good. We'll see what we can do. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.